The war rages on between Russia and Ukraine while Moscow carried out a drone assault by targeting multiple Ukrainian cities. Ukrainian forces sent drones towards the Russian capital, which disrupted the work of Moscow airports. This even as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky held talks with U.S. negotiators in Berlin on the contours of the peace plan.
Ukraine is facing its darkest hour. Russia is thundering Ukraine's skies with a swarm of drones and missiles. The situation is grim in Odessa. Residents are spending sleepless nights in the dark from the third consecutive day after a Russian missile attack crippled the power grid. Kyiv claims Russia launched 153 Shahed, Gerbera and other types of drones from multiple war fronts overnight. But Ukraine is not holding back. It has carried out a large-scale drone attack on Moscow and surrounding regions, temporarily disrupting flight operations. Simultaneously, it has launched a missile strike on Belgorod, reportedly by using the US-made HIMARS system. On the ground, Kyiv claims up to 200 Russian soldiers have been blocked in Kupiansk, a key railway junction, vital for moving its troops and supplies for military operations in the east.
Many of our troops from several units are currently in Kupiansk. Russian troops are in the town center. They got into the town and they are still sitting there. And around the circle, they basically don't pass. Maybe one unit can slip through.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is pushing on with high-stakes talks with US President Donald Trump's envoys in Berlin. They are meeting for the second time in the past 2 weeks. But thorny territorial questions remained unresolved. US negotiators still want Ukraine to cede control of Donbas as a condition for peace talks with Russia. However, Kyiv is pushing back against Washington's demand. Ukraine is willing to drop its ambition to join the NATO in exchange for Western security guarantees. But it is still not clear how far talks have progressed. The Kremlin feels issue of Ukraine's non-NATO status is a cornerstone, with multiple gaps emerging in peace talks. The big question is, how much can Zelensky bargain to strengthen Ukraine's position? Bureau Report, WION The World is One.
President Volodymyr Zelensky is currently in Berlin. He's in the Bundestag. And earlier on, the Finnish president, Alexander Stubb, had actually altered the peace agreement sent by the United States. He divided it into two parts. One, Make America Great Again, or MAGA, and the second one, as America First. He says that the priority is for America, and Europe is not involved in this peace plan. He actually urged leaders in Europe to come up with their own plan that would foster peace. And earlier yesterday, Ukraine abandoned its bid to join the NATO. The president said that this is in efforts to find peace or long-lasting peace for Ukraine. Russia welcomed Ukraine's move to abandon the NATO membership bid. The United States has not commented on Ukraine's decision to abandon the NATO membership bid. We are still waiting for that. President Zelensky is about to make a speech at the Bundestag. We'll have more details on what he said at the Bundestag in our subsequent broadcasts. And joining us live from Berlin is Mr. Ben Aris. He's the founder and editor-in-chief of BNE IntelliNews and also former Moscow bureau chief for the Daily Telegraph. Mr. Aris, it's good to see you. Thank you very much for your time. Let's begin by discussing what the Finnish president did say or alter the peace agreement. He actually divided it into two parts. One, he says that make America great again, or MAGA. And the second one, he says America first. What happens if Europe keeps altering this peace plan?
It's going to make it very difficult for it to pass. And the Kremlin is actually already extremely skeptical of any interference or any suggestions by the Europeans. Ushakov, the main foreign policy advisor to Putin, who's been in all of these negotiations, has said basically that if the EU tampers with the deal that came onto the table after the meeting in Moscow between the US envoys and Putin himself, that if it introduces any amendments, the Kremlin are just going to reject those out of hand. Mm-hmm. And Europe is desperately trying to get involved and to give its own suggestions to influence Zelensky. Because, of course, for Europe, this is also a major security issue, that they don't want a heavily armed, aggressive, belligerent Russia sitting in its backyard and threatening what they claim is imminent invasion of the Western European countries. However, so far, with the talks that have been happening today here in Berlin between Zelensky and the US envoys, and again in Moscow and previously, that Europe has been entirely excluded. So Stubb can say what he likes, it's not going to have any influence other than any points that Zelensky might put up to the Americans, which are then being fed back to the Russians.
Mr. Aris, you are in Berlin, and I understand that the Ukrainian president has just addressed the Bundestag. What did he tell the parliamentarians, and what can Germany do at this moment?
Germany can pay. That's, I'm afraid, what it's boiling down to. That Trump, since he took office in January, that he has stopped all transfers. America sent zero money, and they used to be responsible for about 40% of Ukraine's funding over the last 3 years. And Zelensky is going before the lawmakers here because at the moment the money is coming out of the German taxpayers' pocket, and some elements, such as the far right, the AfD, are very unhappy about that, and they've been capitalizing on that to push their agenda and their sort of pro-Russia, or at least their pro-end of the war, stop funding Ukraine because it's our money. And so Zelensky has dealing with some domestic issues here because the war is increasingly unpopular, although in general the public support his cause. And they're also worried about the spend. And Merz is losing popularity. I think he's the most unpopular chancellor Germany's ever had at this point, because the German economy has also been in recession for 3 years. And the cost of the war is weighing heavily on that and just fueling dissent. So it's important that Zelensky presents his message, because this week also in Europe there's a very important vote on the reparations loan, which will create funding for at least 2 years. They're talking about 210 billion euros, but that's also facing a lot of resentment and resistance amongst EU member states who don't want, again, to seize this Russian money because of various legal problems, because of the danger it represents to the European financial system. And so domestic politics is important at the moment.
Mr. Ben Aris, we'll have to end it there. Thank you very much for all your insights and for talking to us today.
My pleasure.